Hello everyone, my name is Naved and today I am going to talk about the project management, a very brief about it, which will help you brush up your knowledge just before the interview. It is purely on my wisdom and experience, however you should always look at the PM book for definite references, which may take some time to refer to that big book. So please do not forget to like and subscribe my channel to see more on the other verticals like operational risk, the risk involved in the projects, risk involved in infrastructure projects, likewise, and so forth and so on. Again, I do not guarantee you getting selected after seeing this video. So it's purely on your discretion to decide if you would use this video, the notes in it or not. So let's go ahead and talk about the project management. So what is a project? A project is a temporary endeavor to create a unique solution which has a specific start and an end date, like IT infrastructure setup. So it would have a start date and an end date. It would finish and all the infrastructure will be built up, everything will get connected and everything would be there for a particular site. Say for example, now what is a program management then? A, a set of projects connected together to build a bigger solution is called a program management. That is, managing multiple projects at one point of time would would be called as the program management. Example, the IT infrastructure set up across the country for multiple sites. So earlier we were talking about one of the sites where we have to create the IT infrastructure setup for a particular project. Now, those projects in different cities or in different states connected together will give you a program management badge. Now, what is a portfolio management then? Again, multiple programs put together would be called as the portfolio management. Now, the interviewer will go ahead and ask you what is the basic difference between operations, service delivery, and project management. So you can simply tell them project has an end date and a start date, or start date and an end date, of course. And operations is an ongoing effort to deliver the requirement of the customer. It could be it could be an ongoing ticketing system wherein the ticket is raised and is getting resolved. So that is the difference between the operations and project management. So how do you start a project? You go ahead and create a project life cycle. So if it is a software project, I have put in an example of a software project wherein you have to put in a high level design, what I need to go ahead and do, and then a detailed design of the project wherein I put in that yes, these are the minutest things that I will need, and then how do I do the coding and what coding is required, where will I go ahead and test it on the pre-prod or on the testing servers, then how do I go ahead and install that, whether it would be in phases or it would be a go live for all across the country at once. Then I'll go ahead and check if on the production the software is working fine. I'll go ahead and take the closure note and take a sign off from the business. Now uh, each design or each level will have the project management process, that is initiation, planning, execution, monitoring, control, and closure. So if you see below on the project life cycle, I have put in at the high level design, you have to initiate, plan, execute, monitor and control, and then close the particular activity. If your project is not big enough, then you can use the project management process as a whole and go ahead from there. So like in the previous slide, we talked about the the process groups. There are 5 process groups: initiation, planning, execution, monitoring and control, and closing. So we can customize processes, however, we cannot customize these groups. They would always remain there. These 5 groups will always remain there. So relating or starting to the initiation of the project, we need to have a project charter built. What do we need from the project charter? The business case. Why do we need to go ahead and create this solution? Why do we need to have this particular project? What is my business requirement? So we need to go ahead and create the business requirement document. We need to have an objective. What is required? Then how do I go ahead and create this solution? So objective should be there. What are my major deliverables? How will I go ahead and deliver that? What are the roles and responsibilities of the people who would be engaged in this project? So that should be gone ahead and written somewhere. What are who are my stakeholders to this particular project? What are their assumptions? And then lastly, what would be the cost and time duration that would be required? So if I go ahead and click on this, oops, I'll show you in a while how this goes on. We'll go on to the planning. So what are we going to do in the planning phase? We should have these 3-4 points wherein to be kept in mind. What are we going to do? How are we going to do it? And when do we know that the project is closed? The last point is very important, that how are we going to know that the project is closed? So planning includes the requirement, the scope, the work breakdown structure, the schedule, budget and cost, and the knowledge areas. So once you have gone ahead and closed the planning, you should also have the knowledge areas where to pick up or gather the knowledge from. Then comes the execution part. This is the most fun part, to execute the project. But then we should keep in mind the initiation and planning should be very strong once you have initiated the project and taken a right up an approval from the client. That is a place where you should be strong. Otherwise, the whole of the process group or the project will be very lenient, will extend the duration, or may incur additional cost. So you should precisely put in a place what is my objective, what am I going to do, and what are the materials that I am going to use. Nothing more than that I am going to deliver, nothing less than that I am going to deliver that. Okay, let's go back to the execution part. So execution part, when we have to execute the project, we need a project charter. How do we go ahead and create the project charter? With the help of WBS, the work breakdown structure. So as I said, in the point number 2, if you see, do not divert from the plan. If the stakeholder asks you to include anything, explain the scope and the timelines. If he insists, please go ahead and look at the estimate change in duration and cost, take approvals accordingly from the business, from the client, and then, only then, go ahead and make changes in your project. This is called as the change management cycle. So, and very important, as I have put that in the last line, keep your stakeholders informed every 2 weeks or so, as in not more than 3 weeks. You should have a milestone and you should be able to tell them, see, this is the kind of milestone that we have achieved within the project. And then comes the monitoring and control. So while executing the project, you should always monitor the performance of your project, and you should always control the duration or the cost involved in this. So if you see delays, document the reasons, do 5 eyes, check for earned value calculations. If you see, earned value calculation is nothing but total project budget into the percentage of completion of project. So once you know the reasons of delay, once you know there's a delay, take approval of the additional duration, additional cost from the client, from the business. You should always measure the performance while executing the project. Then comes the closing part, the closing or the sign off from the client. You should close all the cost records, whatever the cost is, that from this particular date, I'll not go ahead and incur any cost, be it the human resource, be it any material resource or anything else. So after that, you will not be liable for any cost records. Take final sign off from the client. Document the learnings. That is what went well and what went wrong and how did we mitigate it. So that should be there for your next projects and for the company to see what can be done if they have a roadblock. So I'll show you the components of project charter and work breakdown structure after this slide, but then I thought this is the most important slide that we should have. Now, talking about the terms of reference, we should have the terms of reference for the interviewer can go ahead and ask you, tell me about the work breakdown structure. It's the smallest activity that can be measured in terms of duration and cost. So if you have that activity mentioned and you can measure it in terms of duration and cost that it would incur, I think you would not need to break it further down the activity. And then comes the milestone, as we were talking about, significant point or event where you can send the confirmation of closure of certain activities to the stakeholders, to the clients. Then comes the baseline. That is nothing but the approved plan for the project. Those are the scheduled events. Now comes the triple constraints. You would have heard of it. It includes time, scope, and duration. If you see, if any one of these changes, it will affect the other two positively or negatively, and also the quality of the project, of course. The other one is the project life cycle. The cycle includes initiation, planning, execution, monitoring, and control, and of course, the closure thing. M&C happens between planning and execution of the project, as I said earlier. Now comes the Gantt chart. The Gantt chart is a graphical display of the project plan and its activities. We have the schedule info like WBS, dates, duration. So from WBS, we can take the dates and duration and see what activities can be done in parallel and what activities can be done after one of the activity has been completed. So a graphical representation of all the activities, or we can say all the major activities we can show on the Gantt chart. Then comes the CCB, which is Change Control Board. It is the group of stakeholders. So not all the group, not all the stakeholders, but then these are the chosen group of stakeholders by all the other stakeholders who would have the authority to approve the changes, the delays, or the new timelines. They would be able to help us approve. Earlier, the project managers were doing this, giving the approvals, but then this is not their job. We should always take the stakeholders' approval, the business, the client's approval, that there has been delays or there has been changes. Please go ahead and approve these changes and accordingly make the new timelines or the new costing part. Then comes the stakeholders, people, department, or organizations, as in the external or the internal organization, who are actively involved and are affected by the execution of the project, right? So another one is the change management. We talked about the change control board. Now this is the change management. Very, very minuscule difference, but then do not give a different definition to change management and CCB. So change management is a process established by the manager to control the scope of the project. It is very important. If somebody says that, see, you need to do this also, or a client says you have to do A, B, C, D, while the project scope says A, B, C only, then you have to initiate the change management board, which needs an approval from the stakeholders, from the clients, all of them. So this is a process established by the project manager to control the scope of the project or make any changes to the project duration, cost, or scope. Okay. And then comes very important part is the risk mitigation. So to resolve or avoid the risk identified before or during the project, say your resource has left. Now what do you need to do? Or there's a particular material not available in the market and you have to use another material which is of higher cost. So what do you do? So Very important in the project charter or in the project cost, you will always go ahead and add in the budget cost, that is what you have understood, the project cost estimate plus the contingency estimates. That is, if something happens, then I have extra amount to fill in. That is usually the 20% of the total cost of the project. And then plus the management reserves, of course. So you have to have a work package wherein you have the time and duration, the work breakdown structure. The cost management part should be there where you have the work breakdown structure. So everything put together, the work breakdown structure put together gives me a project duration, the start date and the end date. And everything put together from work breakdown structure, costing part of things gives me the total cost or the combined cost of the project. So as I said, we will go through the project charter components also. Basically, I have put it into 5 sheets. Take it on the project on an Excel sheet or any other tool that you want to, which says the first sheet should have the business case. Why is there a need to do this or to make this particular solution? The second one could be the project objective. What needs to be done? So there should be a clear objective, what all things that I need to do. And then comes on the sheet 3 as the major deliverables. How I am going to go ahead and deliver this, and to connect and say for example to connect and install components. The fourth sheet could be the roles and responsibilities of the employees or the internal people who would be added to this particular project. So IT purchase, purchase of parts, etc. So I've given a grid line here also, if you can see, wherein we can easily make the name, the role, function, deliverables, timelines, contact info of your role of the employees who have a definite role and responsibility for this particular project. Again, another sheet can be created for stakeholders. Who are my stakeholders from IT side, from business side, from BCP side, from the client side? What are their names? What are their roles? What power they have to influence? So how can they influence and which part of the project they can go ahead and influence? What are their expectations? You can put down the expectations of each of the stakeholder, and then what are their contact numbers in case of emergency. If you need somebody to be connected, then how we'll go ahead and connect them. So here's a brief about uh, the planning phase. Earlier we were talking about the planning phase. However, we had not put that in detail. So, like I said, initiation, planning, executing, monitoring and control, closing, planning phase is also important, and we should look at it in detail. So I've put in a slide for this same. If you see on the planning, we have 5 different parts: the requirements, scope, WBS, the schedule, budget and cost. In requirements, you can quickly look at the requirement documents, define the scope of work, which is important, should be very crisp and to the point, should not be vague. If this particular requirements document or the business requirement document, as we say, is vague, there could be a scope creeping. So be very particular that you are mentioning ABC and not ABXX, which will give you trouble by the end of the project. So be very particular. What is my scope and sorry, what is my requirement and what is my scope? So in the scope, you need to put in the project justification. Why are we going ahead and creating that solution? Project scope baseline. This would be my duration, and this is what all I'll need to do. Project deliverables, these are the 5 things, or these are the X amount of things that I'll go ahead and deliver, nothing more than that and nothing less than that. Then comes the project success criteria. is my project, what would be my success criteria, would I be able to go ahead and close it? These are the things, or the milestones wherein my once the milestones are completed, I'll be successful in delivering this particular project. Then we talked about the work breakdown structure earlier. Also, you would know what work breakdown structure is by now. So work breakdown structure, or the interviewer can also ask you, tell me three components of the project baseline, or what is a project baseline. Tell them project baseline consists of three components. One is the work statement, that is the project scope, what is the scope of my project. Then comes the work breakdown structure, wherein I go ahead and create different activities, smaller activities, which can be taken, or which can where I can go ahead and define this particular activity in terms of duration and financial component also can be added accurately to this particular activity. Then comes the work breakdowns dictionary. So what is work breakdown dictionary, and why is it required? So to properly define work packages, else there will be a scope creeping by the stakeholders. As I said, if you will not go ahead and put in the material I'll go ahead and use would be termed as, or I'll go ahead and use this material which is ABC, but then there's another material which comes in as ABCD with a higher cost. If you have not put in ABC only, then the stakeholder or the client can always go ahead and ask you, why are you using ABC and not ABCD? So you have to be very clear while going ahead and putting in the WBS dictionary. So for example, for every single work item, you need to put these definitions. And then comes the scheduling part. So with consolidation of WBS activities, create the schedule of activities. When I'm going to go ahead and do this particular activity, which activities can run in parallel, which activities are dependent on other activities. So of course, as I said earlier, you can use MS Project or Gantt chart or Excel or PowerPoint, anything. However, just just go ahead and take a look at these are few of the things or few of the columns that you should take into consideration, like the activity, what is my activity, what is the duration, what is the start date, what is the end date, and what is the actual end date. The actual end date gives you an idea how much delay is there in your particular project or in that particular activity, and how much delay it would cause to my dependent activities. So that said, we come on to the budget and cost. As I said earlier, that for cost management, we always look at the WBS work breakdown structure and add cost to each and every activity, and then consolidate it or combine it to get the project cost. So project cost should include, as I said, project cost estimate, the risk contingency reserves, like if something goes bad or somewhere the resource leaves and a higher package resource is required, or some material is needed which is not available, or a higher expensive material is required, then that contingency reserve will help us as a project manager. And then the management reserves should always be there. So the cost estimate sheet, as I said earlier, should include the activity, the cost estimated, and then the actual cost incurred. Of course, if you see below the notes, WBS, it is breaking the project into smaller pieces. So I've put in the definition there also, and the definition of the WBS dictionary also. Please take a look. So this is it. I would like to say thank you for watching my video. Please like and subscribe in case you want to see other videos as well in terms of what happens in program management, what is there, and risk management, the operational risk side of things, how do we go ahead and deliver the services, what is a continuous process of operations. So everything like that, go ahead and subscribe my channel. Go ahead and click on the bell icon. Thank you so much. You have a nice day ahead.